A few people have asked me if I'd consider doing a video about the Soho cocktail bar known as Cahoots London. This seems like your kind of thing, they said. Well, recently, Cahoots themselves invited me to come over and investigate for myself, so that sounds like opportunity knocking, doesn't it? As a consequence, this video was made in cahoots with Cahoots. It's alright, this influencer lark, isn't it? What makes Cahoots particularly relevant to this channel is that it's themed around the London Underground in the 1940s, which seems quite specific. I'd say it's more like a flavour thing than a perfect recreation. The bar describes itself as being aimed at scoundrels, and while I'd say I'm more of a bounder, they were fine with letting me in. Let me give you a little historic background. There are, as you probably know, many abandoned tube stations. Many of these were abandoned before the Second World War. When war broke out, they found themselves pressed into service in various capacities. They were, basically, pre-existing bunkers. Most famously, many tube stations, both operational and abandoned, were used as air raid shelters by the public. Initially, this was something that both London Transport and the government discouraged, but following the rules tends to go out the window when you have the Luftwaffe raining hellfire down on you every night. So the authorities relented. Some stations found themselves with unusual wartime roles. The tunnel leading to Aldwych, which at the time was not abandoned, but it wasn't very popular either, was used to store artefacts from the British Museum. Some were pressed into government service. Down Street housed the Railway Executive Committee, but more famously saw itself briefly occupied by the Prime Minister, Winston Churchill. As the Blitz continued, the government authorised the construction of deep-level shelters along the routes of the Northern and Central lines, the idea being that these could be joined up to form new express lines after the war. Most of the Central lines didn't get built, but the Northern Line ones did, and they're very easy to spot if you know what you're looking for. One of them, Clapham South, has been restored and can sometimes be toured. Londoners have this weird relationship with the Blitz. It was undeniably a time of terror when people feared for their lives and their homes, when entire streets were levelled overnight. Even the tube stations weren't necessarily safe. Yet perhaps because of this shared danger and uncertainty, Londoners often look back on this experience with a strange kind of fondness. Sheltering on the tube was not something you could call fun, but there were medical facilities, refreshments, communal activities, even newspapers were printed. You were down there with your families, your neighbours, your friends, your colleagues, but also people who you might never have met before. The term Blitz Spirit is, for better or for worse, still invoked to describe the British tendency to unite and make the best of hardship. Cahoots is, I guess, a response to that. It's unashamedly nostalgic, less atonement, more goodnight sweetheart. All this explains the lore behind the venue. The story they've come up with is that a group of spivs and scofflaws found one of the abandoned stations that had been used as a shelter and turned it into a kind of speakeasy. The fictional abandoned station is Kingley Court, named after the yard off Carnaby Street where the bar is located. Which line it's on, I couldn't tell you. They have maps indicating that it's on both the Central Line and the Bakerloo Line. So maybe this is some parallel universe where Oxford Circus Station had a different name or something. Speaking of maps, I'm just going to say if you're a tube nut, this map is absolutely spot on for the era. Look, there's the Northern Heights extensions that were never finished. 1940s dress is encouraged, although I didn't see anyone dressed in that style when my friend Michael and I paid them a visit, other than stuff. We headed over early on a Monday night. It was busy but not crowded. Actually, I got there early and had a bit of a reconnoitre. There's the actual cocktail bar, which is the tube station bit, but there's also the ticket hall, which is kind of themed half around a ticket hall, half old-fashioned boozer. I do like an eclectic pub. Then we headed down into the bowels of Soho. Check out these stairs, they're made to look like an old wooden escalator. These no longer exist on the tube for safety reasons, but they were very common back in the 40s. They've also gone for Underground Electric Railways of London style tiling, not any particular station, there's bits in different colours, but very much reminiscent of the system as a whole. We were seated next to a section styled as a sort of semi-abstract tube carriage, or car, to use the correct London Underground terminology. What you're looking at right now is a Q-stock train, for comparison purposes. If you're a tube nerd, you can have a lot of fun identifying where the different bits of tube memorabilia came from, or what they're based on. I've waffled on for a while about tube stuff, but what's it like as a bar? Well, as I say, I very much enjoyed the pub bit. I was there undercover, having not made myself known to staff. I was pleasantly surprised to discover that the price of a pint here is quite reasonable by West End standards. As a beer-drinking fellow, I'm used to cocktail bars punishing me for my unsophisticated palate by making me pay through the nose for something quite mediocre. I must admit that when it comes to cocktails, I am not an expert. I am an unsophisticated gent, so take my opinions on that basis. I sampled 3 of their cocktails. The first was known as the Off the Rails because, stay on brand. This was a whiskey-based cocktail, kind of spicy. The dominant flavour came from the 10-year-old Ardbeg Scotch, which is a very smoky whiskey. I know that's not to everyone's taste, but I do enjoy a smoky whiskey. Ardbeg is kind of like the alcohol equivalent of a guy who speaks at twice the volume of everyone else and also spits a lot. You need some pretty strong flavour to balance it out. I thought the spiciness of this cocktail did that very well. The second was I Say Tomato, which I picked because, frankly, it sounded weird. There is, as you might expect, tomato in there. There's beetroot, there's chili, mustard-flavoured vodka, which I didn't even imagine existed. And again, Ardbeg is in there. I wasn't so sure about this one. I must admit that I did not get the spiciness at all, and as a result, the Ardbeg kind of drowned out the complexity. I won't say I didn't like the I Say Tomato, I was just hoping for something a bit spicier. Aren't we all in our day-to-day lives? The final one was, for me, the highlight. This was the Victory Garden. Here's me trying to film myself picking it up like a real human being. I would describe the flavour as green, if that makes sense. There's the taste of peppers in there. I'm getting cucumber, citrus, various herbal type things. It's very refreshing. Almost salad-like, which is a weird thing to say about a cocktail, I will admit. We also grabbed us some bar snacks. Now, they do meals in the ticket hall, but bar snacks is as far as they go food-wise in the actual underground section. We were happy with what we got, which was cocktail sausages, a Scotch egg, and some triple-cooked chips. There's a sort of British food with a twist thing going on. I particularly recommend the Scotch egg, which came with a mustard dressing. Overall rating. Well, I was invited along, and the first 2 cocktails and the snacks were therefore on the house, so obviously that's going to put me in a good mood about the place. We did stay for another one, though, so obviously we liked it enough to actually pay for it. Would I go back? Yes, absolutely. I'd like to try more of the cocktails, and I like the atmosphere. It's not rowdy, but it's not snobby either. It does what it promises to do. It would be a good date venue, it would be a good place for a celebration with a group of friends. It's a fun, offbeat venue, something unusual among the many bars of the West End. If you'd like to pay it a visit yourself, it's on Kingley Court, just off Carnaby Street, a short walk from Oxford Circus Tube Station. The actual tube station. Have fun. Well, I do hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please do leave a like and consider subscribing for more. I would like as ever to thank my donors on Ko-fi, on Patreon, and here on YouTube for your generous support. You are the ill-secured door to my abandoned tube station. And of course, a big thank you to Cahoots for inviting me over. And I will see you all again very soon. Cheerio.